All right, welcome back to Growth by Design, brought to you by RX2 Solutions. Because growth doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. I'm Rob Graham.
And I'm Ross Rosner. And together we are the co-founders and managing partners of RX2 Solutions.
And today we'll be talking about reactive and proactive hiring, which is always a fun subject because I feel like most companies out there are definitely on the reactive side of things. And I just think this is amazing in a way that business is able to grow and develop without necessarily planning all that out, right? So, when we're talking about reactive hiring, we're talking about business spiking, right? Someone quits. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, some sort of event that creates an immediate need.
Yeah, exactly. And it tends to be almost a dangerous cycle that people get involved with, right? Because it's always a catch-up mechanic, and it's never a forecast or planned event.
Yeah, it's almost the difference between, easiest example I can think of is buying new tires because you got a flat. You're going to pay the highest premium price you can. You're going to pay for the tow truck, and you're going to get raked over the coals, and you might not even be getting the right thing. I remember one year I was driving back from college and I blew out a tire in Maryland on 95 on Christmas Eve.
Oh, man.
And I ended up paying like $2,000 between the tow truck and the overtime and everything to get everything patched up. I did make it home in time, but still it wasn't ideal. And if I had gone and realized the tires might have blown out, I probably could have gotten the set of 4 back then for like $300, and I would have been home and wouldn't have had to deal with any of that headache. So it's pretty much the same thing.
No, it makes sense. And, a lot of companies will also sit there and say, well, I have this in my budget for my headcount, right? Well, that's great. But how much headcount do you have or have you allocated that is reactive because your projects aren't going like they planned? Right? Like there's very seldom opportunities where a company is going to sit there and look and say, okay, in 2026, we're going to be in growth mode. So we're proactively going to be expanding our team by this percentage. A lot of it comes, they're just not doing that. And they tend to, when they're in that mode too, to only look at one section or segment of their business, not the whole company, and to see how the whole impact is. So, I guess we should start with what's the problem with panic hiring? What do you see as the main issue that businesses face as a result of panic hiring?
You end up overpaying for substandard talent, usually.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why you wait till Black Friday to buy all your kids' toys for the holidays. It's because it's on sale. Like, why buy something when it's not on sale if you don't have to? And I'm not saying price is the biggest thing, but when you plan ahead, you have a strategy and a game plan. Panic hiring is essentially firing from the hip, and you just sort of get what you get. And it makes business sense to make the hire, because if you don't, like we talked about last week, you're either having the work fall back on your existing team or you're doing it. And it's a quality of life issue for whoever you end up putting it on. So you end up getting somebody who, might be, you have some sort of trade-off. Either you're paying too much, or, they don't have the right skill set for what you'd expect in someone coming in the door, or they're not a cultural fit. And all of those things can have a massive impact on your business. If you are intentional about it and plan for it, you can take your time and make the right hire. And then you don't have to deal with those issues.
Yeah. I mean, you summed it up, right? It's the biggest thing. Panic hiring creates a disruption for your current team because they're interviewing. They're often rushed on their interviews because they have to get the rest of the job done. Then after the rushed interviews happen, right, you tend to make poor hiring decisions.
You have half the people on your team giving a thumbs down to the person, and then when they fall on their face, they say, "I told you so."
Yeah.
I mean, it creates so many bad things. And sorry for cutting off, but yeah,
It's just a vicious cycle of turnover and not being productive. So, how do you avoid this, especially in the small business front? Because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the Apples of the world who can go in and afford to hire 300 people. And if 2 of them work out, that's fine. You're talking about, a small business in anywhere USA who's sub 250 employees, where every employee matters, right?
Yeah.
It's workforce planning.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in a networking group with a business owner who owns an audiovisual company. If you're watching, hi, and thank you for tuning in. But this person would constantly say during our networking groups that they kept having turnover and couldn't find enough people to get their work done. So they would just constantly hire the wrong people and be in this cycle like you were talking about. And the advice I gave her was always be interviewing. These key roles within your organization, just constantly be building the pipeline. Of course, you can bring in a company, a respectfully professional people company like RX2 Solutions. We will gladly run a custom search for you and deliver the right candidate for you. But the way that companies can do this on their own is by always look for key impact players that can add to your team, whether you need them or not. That means, get out there and network, find people that do this role, get out in the community and let people know that you're hiring for this type of person. Have your employees always be on the lookout, because good people know other good people. And who's better to bring someone into your organization than a current employee? They're going to be a cultural fit.
Hopefully.
Well, right. That's true. Hopefully
But
we've seen the other side of that, but yes.
Correct. And I think before even the recruitment engagement part of it, right? The piece of that is forecasting. It's, again, having an honest evaluation of your organization, where you are struggling with, if and when the growth happens, so you can go back and take that out, right? Like, there's a lot of these business leadership books out there, EOS, stuff like that, that's saying like, hey, this is the framework. And I'm not saying to go implement an EOS framework or anything of that nature, but they bring up valid points by just taking inventory of your skills inventory within the organization. And, if your goal is to grow your business, to identify what areas need the greatest or will have the greatest impact from human capital solutions, and then build those pipelines, right? And focus there, and then expands outwards. So at these small businesses, while maintaining those relationships and always recruiting and talking, and referral programs are all fantastic, it's hiring with intention and purpose. And that comes from understanding your business and planning to see where that impact's going to come through. But that kind of brings back or segues us to like these talent pipelines. I know back in the day, we used to have a lot of companies would have benches for contract work. RX2 Solutions, we don't have a bench. Everything we do is fully customized, is tailored. But there are companies out there to have a bench of employees who work on them. And you can kind of treat or relate this bench mentality to that recruitment philosophy. If you know that you're always going to need engineers to do something, or you're going to need graphic designers or salespeople or customer service, or your second shift overnight maintenance techs are your problem point for your organization, constantly feeding those pipelines and building that up and almost creating a bench, so that when John's out, Jane's the next person up. Is a good way there, right? Having your HR organization keep those job postings up and out there, refreshing them, making sure that they're relevant, right? That the hiring date doesn't say April 2023 on it. Like,
we've seen that a lot, actually.
Yeah. And if you don't have an HR department, talk to us. We'll be glad to kind of get you on the right path with it and to streamline that. But keeping these jobs postings up there, leveraging vendors like us that can help you find the talent, and so that when you're ready to hire to make that impact, you'll be golden with it, right? And I think we can even further expand that in a way to like, what are good ways that small business owners and leadership can recruit without actively recruiting?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what we're touching on is risk planning, right? You have insurance on your business because it's risk planning. You have workers' comp because legally you have to have it. You have E&O insurance because, if you end up getting sued, it could be it could put you out of business. There's no such thing as talent insurance. Like, you can't go to, Chubb or Tokyo Marine or whoever and buy talent insurance. So you kind of have to make it on your own. So how do you make it on your own? And I think that's the question we're really asking here.
Or can they?
Or is it even possible to? I mean, I think you absolutely can. I don't know if it would be talent insurance per se, but if you know that there's a key role that if you lost it, it would have a major impact on your business, there's absolutely ways you can mitigate that. So if you do end up having some attrition there, you're not caught completely flat-footed. And I think that's the goal here, to just make sure that you're not completely caught off guard when these things happen. Because you never know, maybe someone's spouse gets a role they can't refuse in another city, and they end up moving the whole family, and there's no way the employee can work remote for you. They could be a key employee who loves you, you love them, but they're moving. So what do you do in that case? I mean, I think like what you were saying, Rob, about the self-assessment. What are the roles that we absolutely that are essential? Who can we cross train? Who's the backup for this person? Who's the backup to the backup? Okay, great. Like where do we need to kind of strengthen our bench and our network? So if someone does end up leaving, or say bring it to a positive, if there's an opportunity, we bring in a new piece of business we need to expand. How do we make sure we're not diluting our brand by bringing in the wrong people because we need to hire quickly?
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it. It's always having that pipeline, have the job description up, have it be well written and compelling, and have people want to apply for it. It's all of those things, and it's the things we've touched on in previous weeks as well. About having that good culture, so people want to work there. So when people are leaving, they're not leaving the horrible review for you on Glassdoor, which you can't prevent. And people can put up anything they want on there, and there's nothing you can really do about it. But you're going to want to minimize that as much as possible, because people look there. I mean, we have candidates who we tell them we got this great client. They look on Glassdoor and they're like, why does Glassdoor say they're this, but you say they're that? It's something that you can somewhat control, that you probably should control as much as you can. And
you bring a point to it to us too, right? That panic hiring and proactive hiring, right, are obviously they're drastically different. They're caused for different reasons, but panic hiring is not always caused by a negative reason.
Yeah.
Panic hiring could be caused by a very good reason. Like back during COVID, we worked with an organization that just took off. And we were staffing them across the U.S. and they couldn't hire people faster, right? And it's just they had a product that was in demand, and that it was a very good quality product that was, growing rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you handle something of that nature? And the point of this is, understanding that outside of a crazy pandemic boom or something like that, where your business may just be very, very much in demand, right? It's what are your business objectives? What are projects do you have budgeted in the upcoming years, right? And then how are you going to upskill your current workforce to handle that? And now the thing that everyone's talking about is AI. How does AI play into all of this? Can AI do any of those tasks? can AI shift anything in the workforce? And this is going to be a whole different podcast segment. So we're not going to go down this rabbit hole of AI, but there's just something there that is just to kind of tease and think about, right? It's that how is technology going to leverage this panic, or not leverage, but how is technology going to decrease the need for panic hiring by upskilling your current workforces by different software that's out there?
Excellent point.
And that's just something there. Now, from the recruitment talent acquisition side of things, where small businesses tend to kind of run into an issue is they don't have any software tied or exclusively towards managing their talent pool, right? You might have an HRIS system. You probably don't. You're probably using like an ADP run system or something like that, where they'll post your job for you on like ZipRecruiter or Indeed or whatever it is. And then when your new employees start, you load them in the ADP funnel, and that's that. You'll have some basic resume searches, things of that nature, right? But it's not a true HRIS system. Those systems are robust. They're typically more expensive, and they're not made for a small business. You know, Joe's landscaping company of 20 employees probably doesn't have that much of a need of it. Or, you know, Stacy's, you know, food store or restaurant is probably the same thing. They're probably more focused on their point of sale system, things of that that's actually going to drive the profitability. But people shouldn't necessarily neglect the HR portion of technology to make sure that you can scale as your business scales with it, right? Another thing that, depending on the industry, put it on social media, right? Like obviously LinkedIn for professional, but if you own a restaurant, maybe put it on TikTok, maybe put it on Instagram, things like that.
I know someone that did something creative. They have 1 million visitors to their website a day. Obviously not a normal amount of web traffic. It's way above normal. They posted on their website that they were looking for people and got flooded with applicants. I mean, of course, not everybody's going to have 1 million people going to their website a day. But that sort of thinking is absolutely how you can keep your talent pipeline fresh.
Yep. And then remember too, that like the best hires come from your trusted networks. So it's going to be referrals. It's going to be people that you've worked with in the past. It's going to be working with vendors like us who have come through time and time again for you to provide you with those talents. So there's always that safety there. And then, you know, take a data-driven approach to this, right? Like you want to look at the cost per hire, how long it takes you to find the person, how much you're paying for them, if you're paying a fee from a recruiter or not recruiter, right? The quality of the person. And the most important thing that people don't look at is how much is it costing you not to have that person employed? Because it's easy to see, hey, if this recruiter's charged me 20% on 100K, they're getting a 20K fee. So the cost of that person is $120,000. That might be. But the person not being there might be costing you $200,000.
Or $2 million.
Exactly, or $2 million.
Yeah.
Like it's not apples to apples when you're looking at that. So those are all things to take away. You know, what I hope everyone kind of walks away here is that panic hiring is survival mode. We need to shift out of survival mode in order to grow. When you can proactively hire, it means you're hiring with intention. And we've said that multiple times throughout all the podcast so far. And you're hiring with a strategy. So you're going to be hiring a better caliber employee 9 times out of 10 who fits in with your company's culture and your vision and really identifies well with what you're trying to accomplish from a whole organizational standpoint. And I think that's pretty relevant for these small businesses these days. And the recruiting tip of the week here is to keep your job postings fresh, right? For those crucial positions that we talked about that you're always going to be hiring for, update, 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 update. You don't want to let it stay stagnant. You don't want it to say it's from like 3 years ago. You want to make sure it's a well-written job description that markets and makes your job posting the loudest job posting out there, and so that everyone sees it and applies to it.
And I'll add a little bit to that. You also want to get rid of most of the barriers to someone applying. And Indeed, LinkedIn, there's all these pre-qualifying questions. Some companies, when you apply, you basically need to type out your resume again. My advice would be to get rid of all of those barriers. You want more resumes rather than fewer. When you get flooded with resumes, before you interview people, ask them a bunch of hurdle questions to weed out the ones who aren't a fit. But your goal probably should be to get more resumes rather than less. The last thing you want to do is have the ideal person for the role who would have applied for your job otherwise just throw up their hands and X out of their browser because you have too many things that they need to clear before they get their resume to you.
Yep. Good point there, Russ.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in to Growth by Design, brought to you by RX2 Solutions. Remember, growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. Until next time.